All right, so one of the things I've been trying to figure out what I needed to do was when we was trying to get the car to where it would run to where we could break the cam in and all that stuff when Jim was here, I wired up the coolant temp sensor, which is way up here at the front of the engine, and I just ran the wire across the intake because we just needed it to run, so I didn't need to do any finish work of any stuff like that. So I knew I was going to have to make some kind of bracket or something to hold that wire so it's not just laying down in there. And I'm kind of having a little bit of a tough time trying to figure out exactly how I'm going to do it. I've got an idea of what I might do, and I may actually build a steel bracket that looks kind of like a T. It would drill a hole in it, and I would bolt it down here on this existing hole in the intake, which is 3/8 by 16 thread size, and then basically make it a T piece where it's, I don't know, 4 or 5 inches long. And then I could drill and tap the T, the long piece, to put 2 little clamps to clamp the wire on. So I may do that. I dug through I have a whole bunch of clamps and that type of stuff, and I actually found this in there, so I used one off of something. I mean, most likely engine because it's covered in grease, but it has a rubber coating on it. And I thought about bending this up into a 90 and bolting it there, but again, it's just one spot that the wire's held on at. It's getting kind of, well, there went that. It's getting kind of limited for space up here because I got kick down cable, the vacuum hose for the power brakes, and that type of stuff. This 327, these heads, these old school double hump heads, they don't have the ports in them for like accessories to put in there, like, coolant temp sensor and that type of stuff. So it's really the only place I have that looks nice, I should say. I'm, obviously could buy some kind of thing to put in here or something and make it look goofy, but we're trying to make it look as nice as possible. So I'm just going to have to kind of figure out what I'm going to do here. It's kind of tough. I've got to put a lot of thought in some of this stuff to be able to route wires and make it look nice and it still be, held in place. I don't want to get caught up in the linkage or anything. But I'm going through and I'm looking for bolts out of my stainless batch, and I've got this 3/8 by 16 stainless steel socket cap, but I'm going to have to cut it down. Alright, I started building a bracket here. So this is just some strap steel that I had laying around here. That is part of the other steel that was originally on his fuse box mount. So I actually used a piece of that. This strap here I had in my junk bin. So I bent up a bracket there and welded it. Well, I'm going to go back and grind that all smooth and flat. So then I drilled and tapped it to 832, and I used some little stainless steel button head Allens, and I used some plastic black loom clamps that I had in my container full of clamps. This is that new style shielding, and it's just some that I have. It's kind of perfect for a single wire. I think it might still be a little bit large, but anyway, the existing hole in the intake manifold up here, so that'll pretty much go kind of like that. Let me get a bolt in it. It's too hard to do one-handed. So I got it bolted down there, and I've got just the loom sleeving going through there. It'll be over the wire, but it kind of gives you the idea of the way the wire will be routed. I'm almost thinking about putting one dead center since this bracket's offset. I may put another clamp there, but I don't really think it'll need it. But at this point, it's just a little bit hanging out the front that'll come out and around and go to the temp sender there. And then that one back there will go back to the hole in the firewall. So I think it'll look pretty nice. Now, it really needs to be painted the copper. That bracket does. That way it'll disappear. It'll be hardly noticeable on there. So I think that's what I'm going to do. That's going to get painted copper, and that's base coat clear coat, so I don't want to mix up base and clear just to shoot that one little bracket, but I do have a couple more items that I may need to do. Now, I touched on this in a video. This car originally had power windows and there was issues with everything, so we converted it to manual. And this is cut out for a factory steel curved wire cover that goes on here. That's where all the power window wires and stuff went through, is this. So they didn't weld this up at that shop and left it, so there's a giant hole there, and it's not cut out very well. You can see it's kind of butchery looking. So what I wanted to do is get a piece of steel, some sheet metal, and cut it to where it fits down in the lowest part of this, and basically round the edges and everything to where it looks like it's part of it. Other than it'll be raised off a little bit right here, but I actually might be able to curve that, because the back side of that right there kind of curves around. I might be able to curve that a little bit into that so it won't look as blunt. But anyway, your rubber door seal, it goes out here, so that's no issue with sealing on the door. But I just don't want a hole here, because when you open the door, you're going to see that. So these two pieces, I'll have to make one for each side. And what I'm going to do is weld a stud in the middle of it, like a piece of all thread, just a small one. And I'll take just a long skinny piece of strap, drill a hole in the center, and when I stick that plate up there, I'll put the strap on the back and then put a lock nut on it and tighten it in from back here, because there's a hole here. That wasn't loud at all. But anyway, that strap, you know, coming in lengthways this way, coming into that, will lock it down. That way it'll stay put, instead of trying to glue it in and oozing stuff out on the paint, all kinds of crap. So it's really just a block off panel, but that needs to be painted copper as well. So I think I'll build those, and then those three items will get painted. I think that'll look really cool. But anyway, I think I'm happy with that. I think that'll work just fine. And I've got that, the way I made it, you can still get the valve cover straight off. Nothing's in the way of it. So, and it has to be bent a little bit this way. But anyway, the valve cover will come off without having to take all that stuff off. But that'll work. It's all because coolant temp sender wire is way up here in front of the intake for everybody to see. You know, the later model GM heads, they have holes right here. And you can do your temp sensor there. But in this case, this engine's really old, and it doesn't have a lot of provision stuff like the later model stuff does. But that's what I'm gonna do. Body color. Alright, so I've got a template cut out here. I'll pretty much go on there like that. I actually still need to. That bottom needs to be cut more at an angle, like this. So I will cut two of these out of steel, and then I'm going to I'll drill a hole in the center of this, and I'll use some small all thread in there, and I'll stick that all thread where it's just down from being level. That way it'll fill it up with weld on the top, and then that way it'll have a stud, like, I don't know, ½ inch long or something. It doesn't need to be that long. I don't know, 3/8 quarter or something. I'll figure something out. But anyway, that stud will be hidden on the back. After I grind that weld, it'll be smooth. This will all be solid smooth. You won't know there's any hardware on it. It'll be hidden fasteners basically. And then on the back side, I'm just going to take a piece of strap that's about half the thickness of this, and it'll go in from the back that way, and it's basically just a lock plate that'll come down on it, and I'll tighten a nut on the back and it'll hold it in place. So that'll be pretty cool. I've got some really thin, almost, well, probably about the thickness of this, and it's foam, sticky back on one side. So after I get these done out of steel and get them painted, I'll put that sticky foam on the back on this side. It's not sticky on the side that's going to the car, but it'll stick to that, and it'll be a good cushion on there so it doesn't, you know, gouge up or dig into the paint. But that'll be a nice little cover right there, I think. But you know, if you guys are in kind of the same shape, or you know, you're trying to think of something to do there, I welded in a piece of sheet metal all the way out here and welded it all the way around and ground it. Mine's completely smooth. There's not even an indent here. But if you wanted to put something here custom similar to this, you could take your pieces. You could do this in stainless or little pieces of aluminum like this, and you could take it to a trophy shop or a place that does engraving and have, you know, your last name put on there, Chevrolet 55. I mean, you could have anything put on there, and then it'd be engraved on the stainless steel or whatever. If you did stainless steel, you could polish it and it'd look really nice in there. But anyway, what I'm going to do is just painted parts. That way it kind of just disappears. It'll go away. It's not nothing that's going to stick out. Now I got the left one. I got the corner bent around. I used my sheet metal brake and just kept, you know, do a little bit and then do a little bit, do a little bit, do a little bit until I got a contour out of it. So I drilled a hole in the center, kind of center. I just kind of eyeballed it. And then I've cut a piece of all thread here. This is 1/4 by 20. And I stuck a flange nut on there backwards. And then I went through here with a chamfering bit or a countersink bit. I just used the ones from Harbor Freight. They're really for wood, but they'll work for steel. And I mean thin stuff like this, you know what I mean? Anyway, that I'll get the depth set with this, and this will help hold this flush. Like if that nut's laying on there flat like that, I'll be able to fill this with weld. With that being countersunk like that, I can fill all of that with weld, so to make it a little bit stronger. Then I'll go back and grind it smooth, and it'll have a stud welded to it for the back side. So it's kind of the best trick for that, really, is to do it that way. Now that'll be kind of delicate. You don't want to, you know, go to tighten this down and then just really heave-ho it with a wrench back there or a ratchet, because it'll crack. It'll just bust it back out of there. So anyway, that is how I'm going to do it. Now I need to get this one bent up. I need to get another piece of all thread cut out, grab another flange nut. I'm gonna go ahead and weld the studs on here, and then I got to dig out a piece of strap to drill a hole in the center of to make a crossbar for the back to lock it in place. And I've got all kinds of crap here. This is still part of what's left of what he had on that fuse box piece. There might be enough to use out of that. Alright, so I got the piece welded on, and I ground it. So these will have to be puttied and then primed and then blocked out, but it'll look really nice on there. And hopefully it's, you know, out of sight, or well, not noticeable is what I'm after. Alright, I got the stud welded on. I ground it off, and I've went around the edges with a Scotch-it disc just to kind of smooth them up a little bit. These are going to get wiped with putty and then blocked out, and then they'll get primed and then sanded and then painted. That way they're nice and slick. So I've got a back piece cut that goes on the back. Now it's actually thicker here than it is here, so I've offset my hole just a little bit. But anyway, I'm going to be using I'm actually thinking I'm going to use a nylock instead of a serrated flange nut. I don't know yet, but anyway, that'll go on there just like that. And I've got the corners rounded where they kind of contour the body a little bit, and then that bracket will go on the back, and I guess I can just stick it on there. There it is, mounted. I didn't tighten it, obviously. I just got it up there finger tight to hold it. When that's painted the copper, it should look nice. I mean, obviously it's just a cover, but you know, at least it's not a butchered out hole. So I've got the one for the other side. I got it welded. And I got the strap for the back on there, but anyway, that one's kind of ready. I just need to finish the edges and grind that and everything and then clean it up. But I'm just going to wipe those, fully wipe them with putty, and then go back and block them, and then prime them, and then block them again and paint them. So I can paint these two covers and paint this bracket. I did get this bracket final finished out. I went around it, sanded it, cleaned up the edges and everything, so it's really, really nice. I'll paint that copper, and then that way it'll kind of disappear on the engine. If that was black, it would just stand out. So anyway, I got 3 items to paint, and I'm not sure when I'm going to paint those, because I may end up finding something else I need to paint, you know what I mean? Anyway, just a little bitty, I don't know, a little bit of work on something that to me would drive me nuts, opening the door and seeing a hole in my cowl all the time.